All right, it's about 10:01 according to my clock here, so I think we should get started. We've got about, looks like about 12 on the go-to, and so we got a good turnout today. So welcome everyone. This is the April 2016 New Mexico Drought Monitoring Workgroup call. I've been recording these, so I will post them out later. And I'll let people know where to get it. So what we usually do is we start off with going around the call. So please announce yourself and who you're working with. This is Dave Dubois down in Las Cruces.
Ollie Reed, Albuquerque Journal.
Relay Batum, your reclamation.
And we're in Rose.
This is Sig Silver, Santa Fe, Milwaukee Soil and Water Conservation District.
Chris Romero, Chris Romero, NRCS.
Les Owen, NMDA.
Anthony
Curtis McFadden, Albuquerque District, Corps of Engineers.
Anthony Chavez, Farm Service Agency.
Chuck Jones here at the Weather Service office. I'm joined by Abby Lewis with Senator Heinrich's office, Molly Magnuson from the Office of State Engineers, and Deirdre Kahn, our science officer here at the Weather Service office.
All right.
John Lopez, Mayor Los Ranchos to Albuquerque, and Jeff Phillips, Los Ranchos to Albuquerque.
Anybody else? Anybody else? We're just going around the call, announcing yourself.
Hi, this is Richard Heim, NCEI, the Drought Monitor author this week.
Hi, Richard.
I'll make that bigger.
Yep.
Go to the display setting. Take that down. Do the top one.
All right. Are you guys ready in Albuquerque?
And does that look better?
Big screen now?
Perfect.
All right.
Good job.
Boy. So, yeah, again, here's April precipitation. Hooray, we've had some. Especially in the Rio Grande Valley, not doing too bad, and parts of the east. And that's kind of what we were seeing in the outlook for April. Certainly better than March's outlook. Had a nice rain and snow event. April 17, 18, 19 in there. Yeah. And this particular satellite image, red, green, blue it's called, shows red as snow. So you can see the nice snow event that they got up there. But I'm sure, as Chris will say later, that, and I might show that, it's not much of it is left. It's going away pretty quick. Okay, so this is our monthly look here at Embudo, long duration water gauge here, and we can see a couple of things. The record temperatures in March, record dry and warm March. Got some good runoff. Got some cooling and another little snow event, but now we're starting to see what we have left there starting to run off as well. I imagine this will probably peak here not too much longer and then start down unless we get some really good significant precip events going on. So the bad news, March, statewide average 0.06 inches. That's not very much. A lot of places didn't get anything, and those that did didn't get much. So 8%, not good at all. And you can see it was tied for the driest March on record with, what was it, 1956? Yeah. For the calendar year, not too good either. 11th driest on record, over an inch below, and over an inch deficit. Statewide average just 44%. And we know the last 4 or 5 early spring periods have been exceptionally warm and dry, and 8 of the last 11 actually have been below normal. Our famous precip maps here. Tale of 2 tapes, really. January through March, not so good here across New Mexico, with very low precipitation amounts, well below average. If we throw in the water year, though, from October through March, it's significantly better. Well, that's only because, as we'll see here in a minute, from October through December. As a whole, the first half of the water year, October last year through March, looks pretty good. 27th wettest on record. And yeah, I guess we'll take that, but its primary was due to October through December, where we were 188% of normal, and the 7th wettest on record, whereas the last 3 months have been under half of what we normally would get, and it was 11th driest on record. So it's kind of like good followed by bad. If we expand out a little more to 12 months, still not looking too bad. 12th wettest on record, about 3 1/3 inches above normal. Works out to 124% of normal. And even 24 months, 2 years, 117% of normal, 4 3/4 inches above normal. 36 months, still not bad, about 4 inches above normal, 110% of normal. But then again, if we look at the 4 and 5 years down here at the bottom, we can see a pretty significant deficit showing up in that 4 to 5 year period. So again, long-term drought, really long-term drought is still there. So NASA sport images here, deep soil moisture from 0 to 200 centimeters. Compared to the last 5 weeks, from 5 weeks ago, actually we've had some improvement, especially in the Rio Grande Valley, as we saw with the precip too, over the course of this month so far. And really, quite a few areas of the state have better deep soil moisture, and quite a few areas have 0 to 10 centimeter, or the very top level, showing some pretty decent improvement in soil moisture over the last 5 weeks. The one negative, though, is that actually isn't that better than? It's still a little better up here in the mountains.
No, because there's less blue.
There's less.
So
blue.
it shows that we lost our snowpack.
Okay. So yeah, there goes what we had of a snowpack. Regional drought. We've seen the ugly head of the drought return to New Mexico. About 44% of the state is in moderate drought now, and the rest is in abnormally dry, just about. And still California, western Nevada, main focus for severe, extreme drought, exceptional drought. So just a close up here then of just New Mexico. Again, 44% of the normal and moderate, 44% of the state in moderate drought. Compared to 3 months ago, obviously big changes, a lot drier across most of the state. So what can we expect for ahead here? Well, still look back 4 weeks, last 4 weeks, sea surface temperature anomalies still hanging in there at around 1.5 degrees. But here in the last outlook, which will show up here, is this Nino 3.4 region that we're looking at has now dropped below a strong El Nino to a moderate El Nino, 1.3 degrees Celsius. And you can see in all El Nino, in all these regions here, they're all declining rather significantly since the December or start of the year. This same idea here. The forecasters are all suggesting that we are trending back, obviously, to neutral conditions by late spring, early summer, and then it's looking more and more like we could see a La Nina in the fall and winter. This is the forecaster in the upper left, very similar to the model output down here on the right. Same idea here, just showing the sharp drop in the El Nino to neutral and then possibly into La Nina. As a result, La Nina watch was issued last week and is now in effect along with the El Nino advisory. Climate Prediction Center outlook for next month, May, is still encouraging, showing a tendency toward above normal precipitation across all of New Mexico, and especially the northeast 3/4 or more. Meanwhile, temperatures are below normal, which would help with the above normal precip if we got that. And even May, June, July outlook, again, a tendency toward above normal precipitation, especially across the far north. Temperatures near to maybe trending above normal over the southwest. And then just a peek ahead to autumn, which is the September, October, November period, complete reversal. We are leaning toward below normal precipitation, especially across the northern half, whereas a very strong tendency toward above normal temperatures. Seasonal outlook, drought persisting where it exists now, and perhaps dropping out of the far northeast and east central plains. That's all, unless we have any discussion about any changes we want to make to New Mexico's drought status next week.
This is Richard. Could you put the sport soil moisture map back up, please?
Which one?
I guess it was the last one that you showed. That one. Oh, yeah, April 25, March 19.
Yeah.
So the redder it is, the drier it is, right?
Right.
They have some
changes. We're talking about changes.
Yeah. I mean,
so the negative.
These are delta.
Oh no, this isn't a change. I'm sorry. This is moisture. The previous one was a month-long change.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
So the dryness in the southeast and south central part of the state shows up pretty strong on the sport map. Do you think that is significant enough to have D1 put into those parts of the state?
Can I chime in there? You know, these maps have some problem areas, and I would not use this alone to determine that. This is a combination of observations and modeling, but one of the main inputs to it is analyzed precipitation, mainly from our radars. And so there are places where we don't have great radar coverage, where we don't have as much faith in the observation. And those would be generally in the extreme parts of the state, but also kind of south central and that area just to the east of the south central high terrain, like in southwest Chavez County.
right.
Down, Chavez County.
Where are we?
Oh,
okay.
There you go.
Okay.
This area is always kind of problem, and all the way down to the state line is always problematic for us, as are both your extreme northwest and northeast corners. So I would want to see some precipitation values or some eyewitness reports or something. I wouldn't want to just use this soil moisture.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, just a little more. Hey, this is Chris White. I actually was able to join the call, kind of representing the NASA support group. Although I don't have the presentation in front of me, I'm not viewing it. I was just listening. But yeah, you're pretty much right there. Deidre, and just add that what it's using is it's using the NL-DAS forcing for, whenever that's available, and it's usually, about a 4-day latency. And then from T0 to that 4 days prior, it's using the NSSL, the MRMS precipitation data set for the forcing. So I think it's the radar and the gauge combined data. Which, of course, there are still some limitations, and as you all well know, in your part of the country out there.
Right. It's great to have you on the call.
That's okay. Yeah, thanks. Are there any questions about that data set?
Oh, this is Richard. Thank you.
Okay, sure. In the near future, they will be incorporating some of the SMAP and SMOS, the satellite retrievals data, into the soil moisture, so that there's an added satellite direct observational component to it. The good thing about an environment like New Mexico, it's going to get pretty decent readings of soil moisture out there, as opposed, ironically, to places in the east where there's a heavier tree canopy. But anyway, we'll be sharing more information about that soon.
Okay, any questions for Chuck?
Quick question: what's the outlook for this week on the weather? Because I've been seeing your website, and the percentages is going up on preset, especially in the mountain regions.
Yeah, I've been off for a couple of days, and then just back. I haven't looked at things too close yet. We're talking 2 storms, one Thursday, Friday time period, and then another one over the weekend with pretty cool temperatures. So looks like we can certainly get some wet snow in the northern mountains, even the western mountains, and some rain at lower elevations and the east, and so certainly looking up.
We've
been increasing our pops here the last couple of days.
It's not going to be a big impact as the earlier April storm.
I said it's not going to be. Right now we don't have. I don't think it's high QPF, but the length of it, may add up to some decent amounts. But yesterday, for the work week, the QPF values were all below like 1/4 of an inch. But the weekend storm could be good and lingering into early next week, so we might get some decent amounts out of it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Alrighty. Any more questions, comments? Guess not. All right, we can still revisit any of the drought monitor comments as we go through. So, Raymond, do you want to come in at this point?
Sure, I can do that.
Great.
So I'll start with the Rio Grande, the storages. For Toro is 14,173. Aaron is 81,347. Lotto's come up to 83,202. Q 132,590. Coach T 46,527. House and Butte 339,532. And Caballo 63,337. Now we did slip back into Article 7. Those two had dropped below 400,000 feet. So back in Article 7 there. On the Pecos, Santa Rosa 103,015. Sumner 40,416. Brantley 25,297. And Avalon 22,008. So on the Rio Grande, we were capturing pretty good water into Lovato. Right now, we're still able to store a little bit, even though we're on our 7 for the Federals and some under the Emergency Drought Act. But otherwise, we're we'll be bypassing. Still looking at the main stem to come up. We hope it does. Crossing our fingers. But otherwise, it's been helping. The district has been on MRGCD, and we haven't had any difficulties. The river's complete. It's connected, and haven't been using any waters from storage yet to maintain that. And on the Pecos, we're doing well. The river's connected. Inflows in the Santa Rosa have been coming up real well. CID is going to do a block release starting this Friday to Brantley. They'll start Sumner on Friday, Santa Rosa on Monday, looking for about a total of 18,000 acre feet. 10,000 will come out of Sumner, 8,000 out of Santa Rosa. So they've been watering very well below Brantley, so that'll help them there, and it'll make some room up north. Hopefully those inflows will continue, and hopefully Wesner Springs will gain more out of this storm this weekend. So otherwise, it was coming down pretty good, and then we got a little hit out of the last storm. So we're still hoping that it will build up. And of course, on the song list too for the Rio Grande. But otherwise, we're doing well. We'll just see what this year brings us. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Great, thanks, Raymond. All right, Chris, are you ready?
I sure am.
All right, go for it.
Wait for you to get it up there. You can, as soon as you open it, you can just go to the next slide. There you go. So pretty much the question now isn't as to how much snow we have, but how it's melted over the past several months. This slide right here is based off all my SNOTEL stations as well as manual courses throughout the state as of 1 April. So the numbers have changed somewhat, and I have some slides that I'll show next that depict that. But you know, we're at 45% of median as compared to 57% last year. You know, and the median, you know, isn't always the best number. So 45% is pretty representative of the drought that we've been having over the past 5 to 6 years at this point. It's obviously better in the northern mountains, the Sangre de Cristos, the San Juans, in southern Colorado, whereas down to the south and west, it's been bare ground for a month to probably almost 2 months out in the western sites in the Zuni. I haven't been out there in several months just because there's been no need to measure because there's been no snow. I was down at Sierra Blanca last Friday, and it's completely melted out except for some spotty sections throughout the mountain, but it's pretty much bare ground. So next slide, please. Here's your snow water equivalent throughout the state. As I said, you can see zeros down to the south. The Rio Hondo isn't showing because it's actually zero as well. Zero in the Jemez, the Zuni are zero. The Rio Chama, 55% of normal. Sangre de Cristo is 85, and then over in the Pecos Canadian River area, it's 84% of normal, and that's your snow water equivalent, not depth. So we're not too bad. I mean, we're about on par with last year. You'll see these slides here. It's showing the snow melt, how we've kind of matched last year's numbers as we warmed up in the end of February, March, and then into April. Next slide, please. There's your month-to-date precipitation. The Weather Service kind of touched on this already, but you know, this is your percent of normal, and you can see green in the northern mountains and blues, which we've had some fairly decent precip. It just hasn't been cold enough to deposit any snow, which is unfortunate. We had that small storm that came through mid-April. My biggest concern with the latest storms and the ones that are probably headed our way over the next few days is the wind. You know, we'd managed to hang on to a lot of our snowpack because the winds were fairly light, but they've picked up, and with that, you lose snow, and then you get the dust on snow effect, so you get increased snow melt. So at this point, any snow that we're getting, I'm afraid, isn't going to hang around too long and is going to melt fairly quickly. So, you know, it's kind of a case in the northern mountains of losing 20 inches and gaining 10. So we've lost a lot over the past couple months, and it's just barely being refreshed with these small storms that are depositing, you know, 4 inches, 2 inches here. In fact, I was watching one site, and the hourly data, it was showing, 4 inches and then 0. So that was showing me that the snow was actually blowing off the pillow in between the hours that it was taking the readings. Next slide. And there's your water year-to-date precipitation as of so starting in 1 October. And like I just said, you can see that we've gotten a fair amount of precip throughout the year, but that number is swayed because it started back in October, November, December is where we got that, the 188% of normal. And we had these huge numbers at the beginning of the water year, and then it just tapered off. Next slide. And this is just west-wide, month-to-date precipitation percent of normal. So just an overview of all the western states. And you can see southern Colorado, they did okay as well, which has helped contribute to, you're looking at 103%, 79, and 85. It's helped contribute to some fairly average stream flow values these past couple months. Next slide. Actually, are there any questions up to this point? No? Okay. And this is just a depiction. You can see the upper Rio Grande Basin and the San Juan and Animas, 87% for the snow water equivalent values that contribute to our stream flow. And next slide. So this is a slide showing the snow melt, and you can see the snow melt, and so the snow water equivalent out of a time series snowpack starting at the beginning of the water year back in October. The green line is last year. The black line is this year. So you can see in February we plateaued out, and then up at the top, there you go, we plateaued out, and then you can see that cooling again, and then the spike in April, and then the snow melting off again, and then another spike. And last year, we're well above last year, and this is further north, but I think we're going to see the snow melt start to increase and probably meet up with last year's numbers. But overall, northern, up in the upper Rio Grande towards the headwaters, we were doing pretty good. Next slide. So you move south. Black line is still this year, green line last year. You can see the plateau once again in February, last of the storms, and then it just rapidly melted off, being completely melted off by April, mid-April, which is pretty much in line with last year's values as well. In fact, it's a little bit later in April than last year in the Haymet. And this is all current as of earlier this week. The Rio Chama, similar story. You see the plateau, and then you see the green line was last year, the black is this year, and we started to melt off and cross over last year's snow melt in mid-April to May, and we're just hanging on, and it's going to probably melt out around the same time towards the end of May this year, the Rio Chama. Next slide. And this is Sangre de Cristos, even further north. The picture's fairly similar again. You see the plateau, and then it starts to drop off in March and then we crossed over in April last year's melt-off rate, and then you get the spike there again, which was more pronounced the further north you go, and then we've started to melt off, and I'm assuming we're probably going to melt off close to the same time period as last year if the temperatures increase, but it's staying below average, so that might hang on to the snowpack a little bit longer up to the north. Next slide. And there's the San Juan as well, and it's pretty much the same story all over the northern mountains and southern Colorado. It just tapers off around February, and this time the big blue line is this year, last year's the green, so we're pretty much on par with last year's melt-out rate as far as the San Juan River Basin is concerned. Next slide. So I just put these together to show the differences between the basins. You know, the Pecos, you can see the change. You see the same plateau again, but then we've crossed over last year's values, the red line crossing over the blue, and it's starting to melt off up in the Pecos River Basin much faster than it did last year at this point. Next slide. Canadian River Basin, you can see that red line there. It's about a month earlier than last year. And remember that this information is based on several, just these sites that I have. So this is Tolby, the other one I believe was Wesner Springs. So it's not 100% accurate representation of the meltout, but it's a fairly good depiction of what's going on in the basin with these stations and their location. Next slide. That's all I've got. I guess, is there any questions regarding any of the slides I had up or anything else outside of that? Everybody's just amazed. They don't have anything to say. They're amazed I had slides this time. Okay, well, if anybody said anything, go ahead, I'm sorry.
We're just kind of shell-shocked with the early melt-off again.
Yeah, you know, it's more pronounced in the southern sites. I mean, it's pretty dramatic if you look at the Zuni and basins. I don't have the snowpack time series for those, but it's about 2 weeks to a month earlier than it was last year. The northern mountains and the San Juans have managed to hold on to their snow pretty close to last year's rate, but yeah, it seems to be earlier and faster just overall.
Yeah, that's what we've been noticing over the several years. It just seems like a month earlier than it used to.
Yeah, you know, I put together I had a Rio Grande runoff meeting, and several people online on the conference were there. I put together some slides kind of depicting the seasons, and it's kind of a compressed winter. It's more spread out the further north you go, but as you move kind of to the south, it's much more compressed. You see, you know, November, December, and January receiving a majority of our snowpack, and then it's just kind of warming up and melting off by February, March, and April. It's pretty much gone. So I'm kind of seeing a compression, which is more pronounced in the southern half of the state.
All right, thanks, Chris.
Yeah, no problem. No.
All right, let's move on to USGS. Anne Marie.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
The USGS report is going to present stream flow conditions for the current water year, so that's going to be October of last year through the end of March. This report is going to compare stream flow for the water year to stream flow for the period of record for each one of the gauges. We're using 21 gauges that were selected as being relatively unmanaged conditions for the state of New Mexico. And average is reported as between 90 and 110% of the numerical average for that gauge, greater than 110% above average, and below 90% below average. Based on that, for the water year and for the 21 stations that we're reporting on, 19 of the 21 stations were at or above average flow for the year. And as we've said previously, some of that is controlled by the relatively wet fall we had. Similar to last month, the highest reported gauge is Gallinas Creek near Montezuma, which is at 205% of historic average, and the low is Canadian River near Taylor Springs, which is about 32% of historical average, and those are the same two gauges that had those positions last month. The median annual average was about 117%, which is down slightly from what we were looking at last month. If we look at runoff conditions by basin, the San Juan River Basin is represented by the Animas River, that's number 19, at 96% of average, down slightly from last month. The Upper Rio Grande tributaries, numbers 7 through 12, 93 to 176% of average. Again, similar to or a little bit lower than last month. The Jemez River, number 13, is up 106% of average. That was at 93% last month. The Upper Rio Grande main stem, number 9, the Rio Grande at Taos Junction Bridge, is at 113%, up from 106% last month. The Canadian River Basin, in contrast, is down somewhat from last month's averages. The tributaries in Colfax counties, numbers 1, 2, and 3, are at 116 to 136% of average. Last month, those were reporting 122 to 150, so those are trending downward. Canadian tributaries in Mora County, 5 and 6, 74 to 155%, and the main stem, number 4, about 32% of historic average, and again, those are starting to trend down a little bit from what they were last month. In the Upper Pecos, San Miguel County, the headwaters, numbers 14 and 15, the Pecos River at Pecos and Gallinas River at Montezuma are at 139 and 205% of average, respectively, similar to last month. Lower Pecos, Otero, and Eddy counties, those are 16, 17, and 18, has stream flow conditions ranging from 118 to 155% of average. The Gila Basin, last two reporting, sites 20 and 21. This is another area where the average record is starting to trend down. Mogollon Creek is at 112% of average, was at 143% last month. Gila River at Red Rock is at 107% of average and was 120% last month. So in general, the basins are staying similar or slightly higher, except for the Canadian River and the Gila Basin, which are starting to show declines. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Much appreciated. All right, that's there's no questions. We can move on to the state engineer's report. We have Molly.
Hi. So this is our standard report that we've been doing for a while. Reflects values that we got for reservoir storage yesterday. And then the previous month's values are from the last presentation we did in March 21st. So there's our regular Legend, the blue is the current, the yellow is last year, the red is average, and then the previous month is the dotted line. I think there's one before that. There we go. So Navajo, yeah, Navajo similar to last month, a little above average, a little above last year. And then Ute Reservoir, pretty much the same as last month, a little above average again. Santa Rosa, still, I mean, reflecting, I guess, that there's some water on the Pecos. Yeah. So it's, you know, similar to last month, but above average. Sumner has dropped a little bit from the last month's value that we did have. Still below last year. And then there's Brantley, which is quite a bit below last year, but not that far from last month. A little below. Heron kind of hasn't changed too much. Elvado, I guess Raymond was saying that you're still able to have some water stored in there that you had, so that reflects the change from last month. Still below average. Everything on the Rio Grande is still below the average. Abiquiu, you could say the same thing. And then Elephant Butte, I imagine reflecting the fact that they have been releasing some water, but way below average. So the Rio Grande is still low. I think there's just Caballo is the only one left, right? Yeah. So there it is in a table. As always, we'll put all these presentations on the Drought Task Force website. We don't have an administrative assistant anymore, so it's probably going to take me a little bit longer to get them up there, but we will do that. If anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Molly?
Guess not.
Okay. Okay, thanks a bunch. All right. Let's move on the agenda, number 7, New Mexico Department of Agriculture, and I think Les, are you on?
Yes, I am. How are you doing, Dave?
I am doing great.
Good. Not a lot to report. I did send along this week's crop progress report. I'll hit some of the highlights. Under the agricultural summary at the top, the last sentence talks about stock water supplies. 26% are in the short to very short categories, and that's mainly affecting folks that rely on surface waters and dirt stock tanks and whatnot, that they're starting to dry up with the lack of precip. And of course the winds we've had around the state have driven that, and also down there where it talks about topsoil and subsoil moisture. Of course, I think the wind shows there in the topsoil with 69% in the short to very short, and of course that's going to impact the forage grasses, as our cool season grasses should be growing. But all in all, not a whole lot to report. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions anybody has, though.
All right, doesn't sound like there's any questions.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Les. I think, Susan, are you on still? Or you want me to give your report?
She said she would not be able to be here, but she did send her report along.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw her still on the go-to. I didn't know if she was still hanging on. I know she had 11 o'clock meeting.
Yeah.
I will go ahead and read off her email, and then we can discuss the document there. So let me read it over here. So last year's moisture produced an overabundance of fine fuels. Late winter drying combined with the warmer temps and high winds has produced prime wildfire conditions, especially grass fires. That's the first. There's 3 bullets. The second one is wetter conditions in 2015 led to a 28% decrease in the number of forested acres with observed damage by insects and disease. The impacts of the extended drought effects persist. There are still areas with high activity by bark beetles and defoliators. For forest health, the proper strategy is prevention through treatments that improve forest resilience. And her last point is the Forestry Division is currently managing a total of 26 projects funded with $9.7 million appropriated by the state legislature for the governor's watershed restoration program. More than 4,900 acres were treated between last July and the end of March. Projects using another $2.5 million will be initiated this coming fiscal year. New Mexico's investment has attracted additional dollars through other programs for work on many more acres. And that's Susan Rich's Forestry Division report. And we also have the maps up on the go-to. I don't know if you had a chance to look at those yet, Chuck, or we can put them on the archive if you didn't have a chance.
Yeah, I can send this one out. I did not have a chance to even look at it.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, well, thanks, Susan. Appreciate you sending in some notes for us. Okay, on the next agenda, we've got the Farm Service Agency. I know we had Anthony Chavez. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if there's anything that you wanted to bring up, feel free.
Not a problem. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. For those of you that I'm brand new in this position with Farm Service Agency. I just came on in the last few weeks, and so I'm new to the working group, and just wanted to kind of introduce myself, and did want to say thank you, Mr. Jones, and kind of wondering what you would like from FSA, I guess, and what I'm going to be the representative to the working group now.
Oh,
what kind of information that I need to start gathering as far as doing reports or anything else. I guess in the past, Joy Lynn has been our representative, or Emelita.
Yeah.
But, we've had some changes here, and so, like I said, I'm really new at this. So.
Yeah. Well, this is Dave, and one of the things that Joy Lynn and Emelita have provided are any changes in the county. Is there any news in any of the counties? Drought, disaster declarations, any changes, or any other, even maybe some policy related things that we should be aware of, and that's related to drought or any other weather impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things that I guess I could probably bring up is the Secretary's disaster declaration that we did submit for that. We also put in for an APLN. As far as the administrator's loss notice, that was approved, and this was all in reference to the Goliath storm this last winter, and so, but the disaster declaration was denied based on not having a 30% loss listed within our storm reports, which is what we monitor everything at. So all of those reports were put in by our counties, mainly on the east side, those counties that were affected, and because they didn't meet the 30% loss requirement, the state secretarial disaster or the national Ag Secretary, the disaster designation was denied. But really, that's more of a formality because the APLN is puts into place the necessary requirements for individuals to acquire emergency loans and to start those initiate processes, especially in the livestock industries.
So which one was you mentioned one that was approved for the Goliath storm?
Correct. That was the APLN. By that's the administrator's loss notice.
Thank you.
And that was approved. That was submitted by our SED, which is Molly Manzanares, and made that request immediately, and then that was approved. So what that does is that puts into place anything for physical loss. It's the administrator's physical loss notice. So those things that come under a physical loss, which livestock losses are considered a physical loss. So for those individuals, the dairies, the livestock producers that had a physical loss, it initiated those emergency loans that they could access under the APLN. And those were the main things that needed to be addressed. So that comes under an APL, and where the secretarial designation, most of these programs that we have now that are disaster programs were put into the 2014 Farm Bill. So they're available now as disasters come about, whereas before it was always really dependent on the secretary designation. So that's not as important as it used to be. It is still important, but when they went for the secretarial designation based on just the numbers that were put into the system, like I said, that came down from the secretary's office that because they didn't meet the 30% requirement, those weren't approved.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
I hope that makes sense. I'm new at this, so I'm trying to pull everything out.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions for Anthony?
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, much appreciated, Anthony. I really, and maybe we'll talk offline on some of the other things that we may have, some specialty things that we want to catch up. So good.
Sounds good. Okay. Yeah, definitely, so that I can start presenting what will be a benefit to the group.
Yeah, great. All right, so we're getting toward the end of the call here, and is there any other points of discussion anybody want to bring up? I know we didn't really have any strong comments for the drought monitor other than we had some good precip amounts in the Central Valley, where there's currently some D1. If we look in, I'm just looking at Socorro County, where we have sort of decent radar coverage in some of those areas, but we're getting further out into Sierra, maybe not. But I don't know. I didn't hear anybody from the El Paso office. No. So my main thing I wanted to bring out was: is there opportunity for any erosion of the D1 or not? If we want to keep that. I know this is usually our driest part of the year, so I don't like to make a lot of changes. I don't like to make any large increases in drought at this point. I know Nielsen Gammon in Texas was editing some of the D1 over on Texas Panhandle. I think it was over bordering Quay and Curry County.
Yeah, this is Richard. He also got rid of some D0 in the very northwest part of the Texas Panhandle. So I put a donut hole in there and just barely pulled back the D0 in the southeastern part of Union County and northeastern corner of Quay County. But I didn't really feel comfortable making any major changes on the New Mexico side of the Texas-New Mexico state line. The D1, I just basically changed on the Texas side. I didn't really change it on the New Mexico side.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the precip over in the Union, maybe in the tip of Harding. Looks like.
So one thing I think I'll point out is, you may not be aware of this, John has a pretty interesting tool that he uses for Texas, and in some cases it disagrees with the other tools that we've been looking at as drought monitor authors, especially the High Plains Regional Climate Center ACES-based SPI. So as an author, we need to kind of juggle all the tools, and when John makes recommendations for Texas, we compare that against what we're looking at, and most of the time, almost all the time, we accept his changes, since he's got other data sets that he's looking at which we don't have access to, statewide stuff. But usually when I'm on his calls, I will ask questions.
Yeah.
What about the USDA agricultural reports, and what are the reservoirs doing right now, and this and that and so forth. And in some cases, I get him to change his mind just by asking questions.
Right.
I was looking at the USDA agricultural reports for New Mexico just now, and one thing that is interesting is 69% of the topsoil is rated short to very short, and 43% of the subsoil moisture. It'd be really nice to know where in the state are those areas that are dry, but it's also interesting to note that the dry soil moisture is not having much impact on the crops. Pasture and rangeland, for example, is only 20% poor to very poor condition.
Yeah, that's a similar question what I have, and I think that was some of the reasons why we brought in the sport products. But still, that's just one data point. But yeah, I think you're exactly right in terms of the need for more ground truth and impacts. Because I'm looking. Go ahead.
There's one sentence in the agricultural summary at the top of that, which is kind of gives some hint. Some producers were noted as still being undecided as to whether they will plant Pima cotton, upland cotton, or corn in the southeast part of the state due to water supply concerns. So what stands out here is southeast and concerns. So then it's interesting that the sports show that area as being dry for sports soil moisture.
So is that? I wonder if that's the non-irrigated. Because I thought what Raymond was talking about CID doing some releases.
Yeah, they don't really give you a whole lot of information on details in that report for that area.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay. Well,
considering the reservoir report, in low reservoirs, below average reservoirs, still in the northwest and southwest part of the state. But we've had this discussion in months past. It'll take forever for those reservoirs, some of them, to refill. So they're not as big of an indicator, or we shouldn't put as much weight on them as an indicator for drought prediction. Right now, I'm not thinking of making a whole lot of changes in New Mexico, or any changes. But as you know, we could erode some of that D1 in the southwest where we had above normal precip. The SPI on the ACES maps don't really show a whole lot of justification for massive changes.
Okay. I'll go with that. All right. Yeah, I do look at the SPI, but I don't like to only use that as a
right. Yeah, the SPI is a useful tool for, say, the Great Plains and the Midwest and other parts of the country. When we come to the West, the Palmer is definitely not all that useful in the West. The SPI even is not as useful in the West. We need to look at more things like snowpack reservoirs and stream flow and other things that are more appropriate for the West.
Right.
Especially an arid climate like New Mexico and Arizona are.
Exactly. Okay, so I think we'll do mainly maybe look at some future changes, but not much this week.
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, thanks for hanging in there, Richard. I know you've got a lot of other states to look at, so thank you very much.
I was reading email. I was trying to multitask. I was reading some email, other inputs while you guys were giving your reports.
Good. That's the way most of us do our work. If we had several laptops and tablets on our table, we'll use them all, right? Okay, well, thanks. We want to schedule for the May call, and